There it goes. I should continue, right?
Welcome, everyone. We're just going to allow some more people to log in and settle in. We'll get started at 6:05.
I don't forget that at all.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Justin Williams, Interim Director of the Black Studies Program at the City College of New York, and I want to welcome you to the 43rd Langston Hughes Festival evening ceremony, where an amazing collection of scholars, artists, and writers is here to honor and celebrate Jamaica Kincaid. Since 1978, this festival has honored true titans in the world of letters and also become a crown jewel for the Black Studies Program and one of the proudest traditions at the City College of New York. I dare say this festival fits the definition of the term Black excellence, and we are so honored to add Jamaica Kincaid to her rightful place among the legendary writers we have awarded in the past. Now, as we get started with tonight's festivities, we have some messages from the administration of the City College of New York. And first up is our Dean of Humanities and Arts, Renata Miller.
Good evening. Thank you all for being here tonight. I want to thank Justin in particular for his role as interim director of Black Studies. Justin is also following on the work of Vanessa Valdez, the previous director of Black Studies at City College, who has been tapped to serve as interim dean of Macaulay Honors College. But I want to thank Justin and Vanessa and all of the faculty in Black Studies and all the faculty at City College who participated in making this evening possible. As Justin said, we've been offering the Langston Hughes, or we've been giving the Langston Hughes Award since 1978. Tonight, we are going to be honoring Jamaica Kincaid, who joins a pantheon of honorees that include James Baldwin, Gwendolyn Brooks, Toni Morrison, August Wilson, Wole Soyinka, Derek Walcott, Octavia Butler, and Edwidge Danticott. We hold the Langston Hughes Festival each year, honoring Langston Hughes, the poet of the Harlem Renaissance. And we really view this as an opportunity to establish connections with Harlem, connections through Harlem to Harlem's longer history related to the Great Migration in the United States. And through that, we remember the history of the longer history of systemic racism in the United States and the Atlantic slave trade and the history that lies behind the African diaspora. The Langston Hughes Medal is given each year to an author of the African diaspora, and so we welcome the opportunity each year to celebrate voices of the African diaspora, to listen to those voices, to learn from those voices, and to honor outstanding artistic achievement. I want to explain that the Langston Hughes Festival also exists in a broader context at City College. We have a lot of exciting things going on right now. We are in the process of building Black Studies into a program that both connects with the local community, but also serves as a resource for the nation and the world. We're developing a faculty of leading researchers in the field, ranging from subjects such as the Harlem Renaissance, all the way to the global diaspora. We're in the process of currently hiring 2 positions that are going to serve new institutional partnerships that we have with the Schomburg Library and the Hispanic Society, both within easy walking distance of our campus. And we're going to be developing internship programs with those institutions, which means in the next few months, City College students are going to have the opportunity to conduct internships and link that work to the work that they do in the classrooms. And again, all of this work, all of these new initiatives take a whole lot of work. And so I want to again acknowledge the faculty of City College for being able to make all of those activities and also tonight's event happen. I also want to thank our provost, Tony Liss, and our president, Vince Boudreau, who you'll be hearing from shortly. I want to thank them for their vision for recognizing the centrality of Black studies to the mission of City College and also for their love of literature. So whether you're returning to the festival because you come each year and so you've joined us year after year, welcome back. Or if you're just joining us for the first time, I hope this will be the first of many evenings that you share with us as part of the Langston Hughes Festival, and enjoy the events of the evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dean Miller. And now we have words of welcome from our provost, Tony Liss.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Justin. I didn't actually know that I was on the agenda tonight to speak, so you can tell by the way I'm dressed. I thought I was coming to the Langston Hughes Festival to watch the usual wonderful goings on, but I'm really happy to welcome everybody. This is absolutely one of my favorite events. I know that's a tired phrase you hear from administrators at various functions at college. This is my favorite event, but this really is one of my absolute favorite events. It's just been one after another of just incredible people and speakers and writers that we've seen coming through City College. And I'm really looking forward to listening to tonight's presentations and to hearing from Jamaica Kincaid. I couldn't be more excited. I do want to really thank you, Justin, and everybody else, Renata, everybody who has put this program together. I show up once a year and say some words and enjoy the show, but I know it's an enormous amount of work to put this together. And Anthony Achille and everybody who's behind the scenes making this go. It has been a nonstop, every single year hitting the home run out of the park. So I am really looking forward to this. Welcome everybody. And I'm going to sit back and watch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Provost Liss. And now we have a message from the president of the City College of New York, Vincent Boudreau.
Since 1978, every year, the Langston Hughes Festival at the City College of New York has been a love letter that the City College writes to our community, Harlem, the history of Harlem, the literary and cultural traditions of this historic neighborhood, the traditions of African and African American literature in this country, and to Langston Hughes himself. Langston Hughes was, of course, the poet laureate of Harlem and was a central figure in a cultural explosion around the Harlem Renaissance. We have, since 1978, commemorated a great writer, a poet, novelist, playwright that has written and achieved in the tradition of Langston Hughes, in the tradition of the cultural and literary legacy of Harlem. We have honored James Baldwin, Toni Morrison, August Wilson, Gwendolyn Brooks has been honored, Zadie Smith more recently, Woye Soyinka I saw when I first came to City College on this stage, and the list goes on and on. It's hard to imagine a literary figure of gravitas and standing and resonance in the African and African American tradition that has not come to City College and stood on the stage of our Aaron Davis Theater and received the James Baldwin Medal. And in doing this, every year, we at the college are saying a number of things. First, we are saying how deeply we value our relationship to Harlem and how much we cherish the cultural and literary traditions that have come out of our neighborhood. We're also saying that the great literary and cultural movement that Langston Hughes was at the center of during the Harlem Renaissance continues. That every year you can look around the United States and find writers like this year's honoree, Jamaica Kincaid, and say, this is a person who has written with a style and an effectiveness and an artistry and a resonance that reasonably allows us to connect their work to the great work of Langston Hughes. And so I hope this isn't your first Langston Hughes Festival. I hope particularly if you are one of our neighbors in Upper Manhattan in Harlem, or if you're a Harlemite at heart somewhere around the world tuning in, that this is a tradition for you, an annual tradition. And if it's not, I hope you'll know that every November we hold the Langston Hughes Festival. And so you should, as soon as we announce our schedule events, put it in your calendar. You will treat yourself as you've been treated today to a day of symposia and commentary and poetry readings, all culminating in what you're about to see, the awarding of the Langston Hughes Medal to a recipient who will read from his or her works and receive some critical commentary and accolades from some peers in their field. So it is my great pleasure to welcome you to this year's iteration of the Langston Hughes Festival. It is my great honor to lend my voice to the voices that have named Jamaica Kincaid as this year's honoree. And to say to you, those of you who've joined us, don't be a stranger. Come back every year, and we'll hope to see you in person in Aaron Davis Hall for Langston Hughes Festivals next year and into the future. Welcome to the Langston Hughes Festival at City College.
The Black Studies program would like to thank Dean Miller, Provost Liss, and President Boudreau for their tireless work at the City College of New York and ongoing support for the Black Studies program. And now we'd like to start our tributes by an exceptional panel of artistic talent who has been influenced by Jamaica Kincaid's iconic body of work. Our first tribute comes from Alleyne, whose work has appeared in numerous publications, including the New York Times, The Atlantic, The Caribbean Writer, and among others. She also earned a 2020 NAACP Image Award nomination for Outstanding Poetry, was longlisted for the 2020 Bocas Prize for Caribbean Literature, and the shortlist for the Library of Virginia Literary Awards. And now with her tribute to Jamaica Kincaid, Professor of English at James Madison University, Alleyne.
Hello, everyone. It is such an honor and a pleasure to be here to celebrate the incomparable Jamaica Kincaid. Thank you, CCNY, and Justin particularly for the invitation. And I am just going to start reading, but I wanted to say mostly I was trying to think about how do I pay tribute to someone who has helped me think, helped me write, and helped me grow. And this is what happened. Song for Jamaica Kincaid in the key of girl. 1, C. Read Lucy in graduate school. See in her your sister, who's 16 and vibrating with a hunger she could barely contain, wrested herself into adulthood, bought herself a ticket to America, became for a time too a nanny. Read Annie John. See your schoolgirl self delivering her own triumphant compositions. Giggle at Annie's resistance, her infamous captioning of a picture of Columbus in chains. The great man can no longer just get up and go. Read Mr. Potter, and an understanding of your father reconfigures itself in you. You are gentler when you see his face looking back at you in your mirror. Read Autobiography of My Mother. Read My Brother. Read on seeing England for the first time as you travel to see England for the first time. Read A Small Place. Think of your own small place, its simultaneous tragedy and beauty. Read Inside the American Snow Dome. Thrill in the love and rage of it, how it stages your immigrant claims to this country, the we of it, forging a fierce belonging. Find yourself commanded again and again. See, see, see. Recognize yourself, story after story, your Caribbean Sea, your mistold history, your vexing and beloved people, your journeys and debts and refusals and revelations. Find yourself written again and again, seen. 2, the writer you are bent on becoming. This is how you construct a sentence. This is how you make a parenthetical sing. This is how you bend syntax to your will. This is how you suspend time in language, how you suture then to now. A sentence is a thread you mend history with. The right verb can bridle a lie. This is how you make clauses link arms and form a shield around an idea trying to claw its way back to the surface. This is how you return and return to that idea until it believes itself again. But what if the idea is buried too deep or has been under dirt too long? This is how you bare your teeth. This is how you arm your tongue. This is how you call a spade and dig. This is how you tell the truth, which you must do to become the writer you are bent on becoming. This is how you build an image. This is how you create a symbol. This is how you describe African descended people without saying Black. This is how you describe European descended people without saying white. Saying Black or white is lazy shorthand for a construct called race, invented by lazy and cruel people, and race is stupid and unworthy of your brilliance and will not serve the writer you are bent on becoming. This is how you name. This is how you define. This is how you reclaim the words that you want to keep. This is how you throw away the words that are useless, irrelevant, demeaning, or dehumanizing. This is how you say who you are. This is how you say how you came to be. This is how you insist on your right to be yourself as you see fit and not as you are imagined by someone else. Remember, quote, the idea of something and its reality are often two completely different things. And so when they meet and find they are not compatible, the weaker of the two, the idea or reality, dies, end quote. This is how you make your own idea of yourself. This is how you make your idea of yourself a reality. This is how you make ideas and realities strong enough to survive, to help you become the writer you are so bent on becoming. This is how you tell the truth. This is how you state the facts. This is how you ignore people who prefer that you tell their truths and recite their fictions as facts. This is how you laugh when they call you angry. Sometimes you are angry. Sometimes you are not angry about the endangered truths of other people, and this is how you are complicit. This is how you unveil your complicity. Remember, truth does not discriminate and may implicate you. This is how you try to be better. This is how you fail. This is how you try again and again. This is how you acknowledge your humanity. This is how you inhabit your humanity. This is how you imagine. This is how you invent. This is how you alchemize fact and invention to tell the truth and train yourself to be the writer you're so bent on becoming. 3, bread. How you were hungry for yourself in the world of words. How these words have fed you. How you eat and eat and eat. How they fill you. How you are full and never too full. Thank you to Jamaica Kincaid for nourishing me, for nourishing us all.
Thank you, Lauren Alleyne, for those wonderful, wonderful, beautiful words. Our next tribute comes to us from Antigua. Joanne Hillhouse has authored several books of fiction and has been published in international anthologies like New Daughters of Africa. She is a writer, editor, facilitator, and founder coordinator of the arts development project, the Wadadli Youth Pin Prize, which fosters young literary talent in Antigua. And now a tribute from Joanne Hillhouse.
Good evening. I first want to say thank you, Justin, for the invitation to be here this evening. I am having a really surreal experience seeing myself in the window next to Miss Kincaid, because I would not be a writer today if it was not for Miss Kincaid. And I don't mean that in a general sense. I mean that in a very specific sense of being a writer, a young girl who loved to read and who had no resources and no idea of what the models could be, how I could achieve writing, how this reading that I loved to do and this imagination that I had and these ideas that I had could find their way out in the world. And walking to school every day from Otters through Ovals to Holy Family School, not realizing that I was walking past with this young girl who in 1973 changed her name to Jamaica Kincaid, 1973, the year I was born. So for me, a certain connection there as well, that this person has influenced my life in ways that she doesn't even begin to understand. And I'm extremely nervous to be in her company because I would not be the writer that I'm trying to be if she was not the writer that she is. I recently delivered a paper on Jamaica Kincaid at the Antigua conference. And the paper, let me read. When I got the invite to present here on Jamaica Kincaid, I was in the process of fine-tuning my thesis for that presentation. And the paper was entitled About a Girl, a close read of Jamaica Kincaid's Girl, its stylistic devices and aesthetic intersection with literature in the Antiguan oral, specifically Calypso tradition. I think a part of me was trying to reclaim Jamaica's writing as part of the Antiguan literary tradition. Because it was a paper in which I literally lined up Calypso and Kincaid, Jamaica, who have both been so deeply influential in my own becoming as a writer beside each other to explore the literary overlaps. And so when I got the invitation, right as I was preparing that paper, I took it as a sign that I had to be here to celebrate someone who has not been celebrated nearly enough for all that she has accomplished in this 108, coming from this 108 square mile island. I never said yes to an invitation so fast. I'm not going to re-deliver the paper here. Just know that it begins, Jumbi Stories and Nancy Stories, Calypso. These were my introduction to local creative literature. And then there came Jamaica Kincaid. Her coming of age novella, Annie John, at first, which resonated with me in many ways, especially as a gal from Otters, Antigua. A stone's throw from Kincaid's childhood community of Ovals, I was quite literally reading my world. I go on to say that apart from the pure love of the stories she told was the fact that I wanted to be a writer myself, and finally I had evidence that it could be. But I also had evidence that in order to be a writer worthy of putting your work out into the world, that you had to be great. And so I continued to try to work on measuring up even a fraction of that greatness. She was Jamaica, not Antigua. I had someone call me once and ask me, is Jamaica Kincaid from Antigua? This was after she had said some things in the local media and they were trying to figure out who is she. And I very much claimed her, as I do in so many of these conversations, because apart from her being a writer from Antigua, her writing it illuminates our reality, the power imbalances in terms of race, class, gender, the us and them of the geopolitics of it all, but she illuminates it by telling these very personal, very specific, very character-driven stories, which is why I found such resonance reading Annie John and Girl. And then of course she does it with such poetry in her language that to this day, I still see debates about whether Girl is fiction or narrative poem, because there's such hypnotic lyricism in her narratives, in Lucy, in See Now Then. I studied Girl in UWI, and it was a masterclass for me in so much about the craft of writing. Its experimental postmodernist style, its achievement of characterization purely through dialogue, all meat, no fact, the natural build of tension without a single explosion, its artful and efficient call-up of imagery, alliteration, symbolism, contrast, while tackling weighty issues, the mother-daughter dynamic, persistent throughout her work, and one with which I can very much relate, but also race, class, gender, generational shifts, culture, Caribbean culture, and specifically, because the Caribbean is not a monolith, Oval's Antigua culture, through detailing, through specificity. The use of local color in dialogue, in place, in point of view, was one of those overlaps I commented on in my Antigua and Barbuda conference paper, but also the way Calypso not only mirrors society, but questions, challenges, provokes the systems underpinning it. And that is exactly what Jamaica does. And yet, even with the specificity, I argue that there is a universality achieved in the writing of Jamaica Kincaid, a connection deepened by culture, but which at the same time usurps it, in that I've seen so many people out beyond our culture, beyond people who are not Black, people who are not Caribbean, people who are not Antiguan, who relate so much to the themes in her writing, because in the end, it's about power dynamics and it's about people. I'm aware that people disagree with the things that Jamaica has written, especially in notoriously a small place. And perhaps she feels a sense of being persona non grata in Antigua. I wanted to know that this Antiguan loves her very much and loves her writing and continues to be inspired by her. And I look forward to the day when she does get that Nobel Prize that she deserves, so that we can see a billboard with her face and name on it, finally claiming Jamaica Kincaid as one of the greats from Antigua and Barbuda. So the writing is, of course, open to being challenged. I think she's open to that. But what she does is she writes her truth. And in writing her truth, she reminds us that you can't deceive yourself, or you're not betraying anyone, you're not betraying yourself if you tell your story truthfully, or the stories that your characters bring to you and hand to you as a gift truthfully. And you write to lance the boil, to leach out the pain that's within you, and to breathe. Jamaica Kincaid was once quoted as saying that writing saved her life, and I very much feel the same way. I write to breathe, I write to live, I write to exhale, and I aspire to write truth every time, and that is the legacy of Jamaica Kincaid. Thank you, Ms. Kincaid.
And thank you so much, Joanne Hillhouse. Like other iconic figures, Jamaica Kincaid's influence transcends her medium. Helado Negro is a musician who explores the expressivity within intense states of being, Latinx identity, and pluralistic sensibilities. He is a 2019 United States Artist Fellow in Music and the recipient of a Foundation for Contemporary Arts Grants to Artist Award. And now a tribute from Helado Negro.
Hey, hello, I'm Helado Negro, and I'm here playing a song for you in honor of Jamaica Kincaid, for this honor that she's receiving tonight. And I just wanted to share that I first heard of Jamaica's work through the poem Girl, and it really just touched me and moved me in amazing and wild ways. And I was at the end of finishing up an album, and I was pretty close to wrapping up all the songs, but I had a lot of difficulty just figuring out the title. And after I heard this poem, this piece read out loud, at an event that Rachel Katzi-Gansa put together at MoMA. It filled me up with everything, and I just read it so many times and sent it to friends and was just praising it. And I'm still praising the work, and I'm grateful for the work that you share. So much that in the poem, the piece Girl, there's a line where Jamaica says, this is how you smile when, and different lists of the ways you smile when. And I ended up calling the record, This Is How You Smile. And yeah, it was a really special moment. So thank you for sharing your work to the world. And here's a song of mine called Running from that record that I put out in 2019 called This Is How You Smile. Thanks. Fading true, I met you, walk my mind. Terrible, loving home, and I'm just laughing. 'Cause I feel you in my mind all the time. Cause I've seen you in my hands every day. You got me running, 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 just like you. You got me running, 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 just like you. Fading true, I met you, walk my mind. Terrible, loving home, and I'm just laughing. 'Cause I feel you in my mind all the time. 'Cause I've seen you in my hands every day. You got me running, 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 just like you. You got me running, 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 just like you.
Hello, Negro, everyone. Our next speaker is tonight's honoree. She is the author of critically acclaimed and award-winning works such as Annie John, Lucy, The Autobiography of My Mother, Mr. Potter, and so much more. She is one of the most influential writers in literature and an inspiration to people all over the world. Please give a warm welcome to this year's Langston Hughes Festival honoree, Harvard University professor Jamaica Kincaid.
Oh, gosh. Thank you very much. That song was extraordinary. I felt I was being taught it as he played it, and I never heard it before. Remarks. But I don't know what to say. I suppose I should have, but I should have said something, but I can't prepare remarks because then they just sound so canned and phony. Anyway, what could I prepare to say for all the two speakers? That, Lauren, your analysis in a work of art was impressive. More than impressive. It was inspiring. How you got all those things together. You reminded me so much of in the things you picked out, lines you picked out, reminded me of the very moment I thought of some things, some lines, you know. Sometimes a sentence will take me 6 months to complete, and so they last in my memory. And you reminded me of some of those moments. Oh gosh, that was quite a journey through my writing. And Joanne, I'm particularly pleased, proud of, because I never really thought Antiguans would ever like anything I wrote. You know, I've always been jealous of people. I'm not jealous of much, but I've been very jealous of writers who have a people to write for. I've always felt I was an orphan, you know, because I said things that I was going to say things that the people I am from do not want to hear. I was sort of used to that, really, from my childhood. Apparently, I could talk before I could walk, though that doesn't seem really possible. But my mother always told me I could talk, and she was, I could talk before I could walk, and she was very proud of it at one point because it was quite a feat, apparently. And also, I had a good memory, and another thing people were very proud of. The other thing is she taught me to read, not with the alphabet, but through whole words. And I've talked about this so many times. She taught me to read so that I would stop bothering her. Little did she know that it would be the act of reading which would lead to writing. And I suspect that learning to talk before I could walk was my first efforts at writing. So I would write or wanted to write before I could do anything else, is the way I interpret this. In any way, she gave me the gift of reading and so writing, and I think she later regretted that. And I suppose it's from that I get the idea of you must bite the hand that feeds you. So you don't become too beholden to the hand that feeds you. Maybe I bit her harder than I should have, or that she certainly would have wanted. But yeah, so I've always been jealous of people who have a community who looks forward to what they have to say. But I don't see that, I don't find that in Antiguans, except now I do in at least one person and I am very grateful for that. A writer's life is so lonely when you're writing. And I always believe when you're writing, you you have no loyalty to anything but the writing. But when you're not writing, you're a decent person. When you're writing, you're something else. And so that's an instance in which I would like to have my cake and eat it too. I would like to have told Antiguans some things about us that were not necessarily what they wanted to hear. It wasn't us in our harvest clothes. I don't know if they still have that tradition of having a new dress when you go to church on Harvest Sunday. But anyway, I just always wanted to be loved by the people on that little island that I'm from, that I thought was, when I was growing up, was the whole world. I thought Antigua was the whole special world. Oh gosh, this is very, very difficult. Anyway, thank you to that little island. We produce some of that little community produces some of the most glorious people in the world. Certainly their skill with language is amazing. But we're not always kind to each other. We are very quick to, like a family, very quick to be unkind to each other. Now, you might say that I have been unkind myself, but I haven't been unkind. I meant to be kind. I meant to tell us some truths about ourselves, and that hope we would be better. It's always really act of vanity to think you can say something that will make people better. Only God can do that. And as you can see, God fails all the time at making people better. In fact, people who imagine themselves close to God are always among the worst people in the world. Not sure God wants them for company. Anyway, I want to say again, thank you for this wonderful evening, and thank you for making me think for a moment that it's worthwhile to get out of bed and sit at this very desk and look inward, which is a form of me looking outward. Really, thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Ms. Kincaid, and congratulations. And we're just going to have a little bit of a conversation with you. In conversation with you will be a CUNY professor of journalism and New York Times Magazine contributing writer, Linda Villarosa.
Hello. Wow. What a wonderful evening and also wonderful afternoon. I was there this afternoon where the two wonderful writers spoke about your influence. And when you had a conversation with them, it was very moving. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Oh, I see your dog. Little rascal trying to get into the picture. Cute. Well, first, I'd like to ask, so much of your work is, leans into your mother and describes the mother-daughter relationship. Can you talk about how your view of your mother and that relationship changed when you became a mother?
Oh dear. Is it? there's a lot of things going on.
You sound good to us.
Oh, I have all sorts of echoes going on, all things going on. Go with it. Yes, they can hear me. Well, when I was writing the last chapter of Annie John, when I got pregnant with my daughter, and suddenly I found the character intolerable. I really had no interest in thinking of her anymore. So it wasn't so much that my attitude to my mother changed, because my mother continued to be herself, which was titanic. She was, and I mean that in the right way. Let me see. How does the generation? I sometimes would describe my mother as Cronus, not a goddess, a god, and in particular Cronus, who birthed his children in the morning and ate them at night. I would describe her that way. She continued her whole life to be, I could characterize her that way. So it wasn't that my attitude to her changed as I became a mother. My attitude to motherhood changed, right, to feeling there were certain things that she could do to her children that I couldn't and wouldn't do. She was very brilliant and beautiful, and she knew, but it was not appreciated, as you can imagine, and she was very destructive to her own self. So my attitude towards her didn't change, but my attitude toward understanding motherhood changed. I'm of the Winnicott School, a good enough mother. And she was good enough. I don't think she was a bad mother. I just thinking about her, and I think about her every day. She's been dead for almost 20 years, and I think about her every day. But it wasn't an attitude. My understanding of her life evolved, grew. I had more insight into her ups and downs and the person she was. She was very destructive to us. As I say, she remained Cronus. But as a mother, she was good enough.
And I'll get also, so much of your work is about Antigua. And I always wonder what it's like for you now when you go back.
Oh gosh. Well, I haven't been back. Let me see. Oh, I was last year, just before travel was restricted, because the oldest of my three brothers died. And so I went to his funeral. And oh gosh, when I go back, well, one thing I know, when I go back, I would not have been able to write a small place now, because, well, we had just lived through an era of a really corrupt man. So I could see that I had nothing to tell the Prime Minister of Antigua about corruption and thievery and all that kind of thing. When I go back now, I just accept it. There's no reason for it to be more virtuous than any other place in the world. You know, there's no reason for it to be better, I now think. I just accept it. It's yeah, I don't, but I just accept the whole world. In fact, I don't think there's going to be a better world. There's not much I think I will do for a better, but make a better world. I mean, the thing is, the earth is indifferent to us. I don't think we're going to destroy the earth. I think the earth will shrug us off because it shrugs off most of the things done to it, and it has its own journey. So when I go back to Antigua, I don't expect anything of it. I look for Antiguan food, and that's the thing. All the food I didn't like when I was a child, like fungi and breadfruit and so on, I look for them, and they're hard to find. Or blood pudding, they're hard to find. I think it's very beautiful. I think it's very expensive. It's very modern. It's very indifferent to anything I would think about it. And I like it like that. I don't know what I would write about if I was a young person in Antigua. It seems so and I don't like saying this because Joanne is a writer living in Antigua, but when I go now, it seems impervious to literature, to interpretation. It seems to be just another place in the world, and I feel bad about that because I love it so much. I was staying in a place near Old Road, and I suddenly looked up and thought, oh, it's not as flat as I thought. It's got these hills, and they're hills, they're not mountains. It doesn't have a height that's a mountain, and it's as if someone showed me another Antigua, and it's very green now. When I was little, it was always very brown because we had a period of droughts. And so I think, well, what would I say about it? And everybody's building a house or doing something that is good. I mean, the house I grew up in wasn't even as big as the room I'm sitting in now. And I have this peculiar life in the span of my life in America. I've covered 3 generations of mobility, upward mobility. So yeah, I think, well, I don't know what, I don't know it, really well anymore. I was out in Old Road that time and discovered what I thought was a river, but someone said it's the old reservoir, but it's a river. Antigua apparently used to have rivers, and I just, I don't know it anymore. I go to my old school, the Princess Margaret School, and it was a really nice school when I was growing up. I mean, very well kept and so on, and now it just looks like a dump. And there was a auditorium where I used to gather every morning and afternoon, and we would sing All Things Bright and Beautiful in the morning, and Now the Day's Over in the evening. And I walked into the auditorium, and it was just stacked up with steel pans, because the Princess Margaret School steel orchestra is very well regarded. It was, but when I was going to school, that wouldn't be the case at all. The auditorium was a nice place. So it's I just sound like an old person, really.
Not to us. Some of the reviews, many of the reviews described a small place as angry or had an angry tone, which kind of like makes, as Black women, that makes you, feel away. How did you feel at that critique?
Oh, it was, well, it was very annoying to begin with. And I remember getting a letter from some man who lived in New Jersey, and you could tell that he was someone who golfed or did something inane like that. And he said I was angry, and I said, well, you'll see how dated this is. My response to him, I said, well, did you expect me to tell you this as a Johnny Carson monologue? You know, was it a joke? Was I going to do stand up to this? And, you know, it was 88. So the whole issue of colonialism that we now talk, post-colonialism, neo-colonialism, though they were not so widely said, easily said as they are now. And oh my goodness, the woman in the New York Times reviewed it in the briefly noted page and gave it a really savage review. And I think that was the first time I began to understand American racism in certain areas. I've said this, you know, when I first came to America, I didn't understand American racism because I was used to British racism. And British racism, the only people who are white are British people. But when I came to America, everybody was white. People from Lebanon, people from Greece, people from Italy, people from Spain were white. And so I couldn't take white seriously at all because there were too many of them. I wasn't used to it. So anyway, when that review came out, it was the first time I understood, oh, it's racism, and it's directed at me because I'm saying a certain something in a certain way, and it's not about black and white. I was talking about, it seemed to me, though I didn't use that word, I was describing the early results of globalism. People, you know, that's what the slave trade was, the beginning of this insanity we now have culminated in, of global exchange. So I was shocked. Also, it was my first understanding of how ignorant of history white people were, because for the most part the reviewers were white, and they were so ignorant of history. I didn't understand that. Another example of me not really being intimidated by whiteness, because I've always found it to be populated by such incredibly stupid people, including the fact that they are determined to live right next to people they don't like. You know, you go to Antigua as a white person, but you don't like black people, but you go there anyway. And that always seems so ignorant to me. So yeah, that was my first exposure to understanding racism and white people, as we call them, or as Dave Chappelle calls them, the whites, not not understanding their role in the misery of the world, their deliberate role, and also finally understanding that thing called projection. I mean, you walk down the street late at night and you see, as a black person, a white man, that's who you are afraid of because you know the history of these people. And so the idea that you'd be afraid of a young black man is a projection. You want to do something terrible as a white person to the young black man, so you think he will do something terrible to you. So I came to understand a lot of things with the, about race and in America with publishing that book. I saw it in a different lens and could separate myself from it, and also, you know, decided to concentrate on the, there are a lot of African-American writers who can tell the story of the African-American, the attempt to degrade African-American life in America. But there weren't enough of us who could talk about, you know, the history of Europe in the Caribbean. I mean, for instance, Americans get very obsessed with Columbus Day. And I always say, well, it's really Isabella and Ferdinand you're to get upset with. It's not the king and, it's the king and queen of Spain. It's not this ridiculous man who, you know, returned home in disgrace at the end of his fourth voyage. So yeah, that it was with that book that I came to the publication of it in the world. I came to understand a lot more things about America. And even as I progressed in my desire to be an African American, I've always loved, as a child, I really wanted to be an African American, not an English person. I would never have gone to England. But I start and stay with the Caribbean because that was the way the trade went. You know, it went to the West Indies and then it came to America. Yeah, we are very connected, though very different. Yeah, it is truly a diaspora.
I see that you're part of the new New Yorker anthology about Black lives. Could you talk about your essay and what inspired it?
Oh, well, my essay in it is from when the New Yorker hardly had any Black people in it. I think I was the second, and I didn't understand that even. I was the second Black woman writing for the magazine. The first was Charlene Hunter Gold. That just shows you, you know, the gap. She's truly a historic figure. I got there through my friendship with George W.S. Crowe, who just one day said to me, oh, would you like to meet Mr. Sean? And I had no idea who Mr. Sean was. I said, oh, yes. I said yes to everything. I just, you know, so I met Mr. Sean. I wrote something. And the first thing I wrote, again, without being nationalistic or sticking to my own or anything, I wrote about the Caribbean, the West Indian Day Carnival. So yeah, when I was at the New Yorker, it was just filled with white men. There were even the messengers, the people in the mailroom were white. The only other person who was Black was Jervis Anderson. So he was the, and he was really a staff writer before me. But at the New Yorker then, I mean, as I say, they were all white men and they all had gone to some Ivy League school. And I think they thought I was silly or something, but I didn't care about them because I thought they were ridiculous, writing in that style. You know, they had no life to them, writing, we did this, we did that. And it was all very nice. I mean, yeah, I didn't like reading it then. I much prefer reading it now because it's such a error. But that piece I wrote was about my youth in New York. I used to write a lot about my youth in New York. And at one point, someone said, oh, you should write about New York, which means I would never write about it because I never write about anything anyone tells me to write about. It, Mr. Sean would give us ideas, you know, for a talk story. And I didn't know he was the revered Mr. Sean. I'd say, oh, that's a terrible idea, and just walk away. I didn't know you couldn't talk to him. You shouldn't talk to your boss like that. But that was a piece about being in New York. And I don't know if I mentioned I'm Black in it. Do I? I forget I'm Black, and I forget other people are not Black. Actually, what I think is that the whole world is Black. until somebody tells me that they're not. It's always a surprise to me that they will tell me they're not. But I just wrote that about being in New York and young, and having, it was such a wonderful place to be young and carefree, because you could always die, doing so. But if you are young and going to parties, and I had a friend named Vince, and we would go to his house and have dinner, and then at midnight we'd go dancing until 5 o'clock in the morning at some place downtown, and do all sorts of wild things, sleep with everyone we met. It's amazing I'm not dead from that experience. And this is within 10 years of leaving Antigua. I just became a different person. But so that was piece was about that time. It's not particularly about politically about being Black. It would be more about being a young woman and living a certain kind of life, and but on the whole, it's being Black or brown or white is not so important to me. The most important thing is power, and that is the thing that is of most interest and concern for me, that the imbalance of power, because invariably, if you have power, you will do something with it. You can't help it. I think, we're human. We like to do things, and we like to do something that we can do. If you can buy a house for $85 million, you will buy a house for $85 million, and you will see the people next to you living in a tent. You will do that. So best not to have $85 million. 8.5 is good.
Could you describe your what inspired your personal style? I saw the times you were talking about. I saw a picture of you with kind of like really short blonde hair. You had shaved off your eyebrows and drawn them back on, and
Yes.
you had a vintage outfit. So what inspired that bold style?
Well, lack of money. I could buy these clothes in a thrift shop for, in those days, the 70s, old clothes were from the 40s. And I would find these very old clothes for $5. I think one style I had was very inspired by Eve Arden, an old movie star, when she was a secretary in some terrible movie. And I liked the way she looked, so I would acquire clothing like that. I still have them. And as for dyeing my hair, why did I do that? I just went to a barber shop on 8th Avenue. And in those days, 8th Avenue was sort of Cuban. 8th Avenue on the edge of Chelsea. 8th Avenue below 23rd and 14th was Cuban, Puerto Rican. And I remember the barber was right next to that old cinema on, was it the Chelsea cinema? But it used to show The Harder They Come every Saturday night. And so I just went in there, and he cut off my hair. And then I bought a bottle of bleach or something and bleach. I did it all myself. And every few weeks I would go to the barber, and he would shave my head, and shaving off my eyebrows. And I can't, I did so many crazy things. And as I say, it was within 10 years of leaving. I left Antigua in late 65, 66. And by 1975, I looked like, someone once confused me with a backup singer, one of David Bowie's backup singer, but I think she got her look from me, not the other way around, because I would never copy anybody. And and I also at the time had one of my jobs was I was a backup singer for Holly Woodlawn. And I just read in her autobiography that we were such a terrible act at, that I was fired and I was replaced by a waitress from Maxis, Kansas City named Debbie, and it was Debbie Harry. So I went from that to writing at the New Yorker, but I really wanted to be a writer, and I one day decided that I had to stop looking like that because no one would take me seriously as a writer if I had funny hair. And so then I began to grow my hair out, and I wanted to look like a Negro lady in Ebony magazine from the 1950s. And I did succeed at that with sort of puffy pomade hair. And then I got married and had children and forgot about all that. Now I just live a life of someone with dirt under her fingernails. I garden a lot, but anyway.
Can you talk a little bit more about gardening? When we were in the green room, you were saying that all those books behind you are about gardening. So tell us about gardening and what it means to you and how it inspires you.
Oh gosh, well, again, all of that, you know, those thoughts came out of a small place. My mother, well, Antigua, really. So my mother gardened, and she had a specific relationship, an extraordinary relationship with the world of the earth and plants. She had a way of eating something, and if she liked it, and it had a seed, she would collect the seed and plant it, and it would grow. And if it didn't please her, she would destroy it. I told you, she's Cronus. And so my brother who died and I seem to have inherited this. He was an extraordinary gardener or grower of things. So even when I lived in New York, I would have a box of marigolds or something on the windowsill. But when I moved to Vermont, I just, well, I was given as a Mother's Day present some seeds and some cheap tools, and I immediately planted them. And of course, they failed, but nothing inspires me more than failure. If I fail at something, I just have to keep doing it, and I may never end up being successful at it, but I do it anyway because it's a failure. I'm not afraid of failure so much. Anyway, I started to garden and talk about it. I became obsessed with it, and my friend Ian Fraser, whom I speak to all the time, he one day said to me, listen, would you just write about this, because you talk about it so much, you never give me a chance to talk. And so if you wrote about it, you would stop telling me everything about it. And so I started to write about